Alright, I am back with another Destiny 2 video, confessing for my crimes. Everyone is blaming me that Destiny decided to stop doing crafting for seasonal weapons during this episode. I do not believe I have that much sway over Bungie personally, and I was also not the only person saying this, but I'm getting a lot of flack for this, and I figured I would address it. I did write an article about it today. I know this ends up being a very sensitive subject, but I stand by my position. I just think Bungie is doing it wrong. I am certainly not going to avoid the reality that the current system for Revenant does not feel good. This is because I think Bungie has not handled the idea correctly of, doling out loot as much as they should, in the ways that they should, in the format that they should. My caveat with the idea of no crafting, whether seasonal weapons or in general, is that it needs to be offset to some degree by, modifiers, whether that is tons of loot, multiple perks, et cetera, et cetera. And the way we've seen Revenant handle this has been pretty bad. And I want to go through all the points that I was making in this article because I think they deserve elaboration. I use original OG Onslaught as the kind of gold standard for how I think this should work. Maybe, not perfect, but the real baseline for how I think that a non-craftable system of farmable weapons should work. The main great thing about Onslaught was that you would get just a ton of loot. You would get lots of loot as you actually ran the mode, and then once you did that, you would have a bunch of currency that you could slam into the chest next to Shaxx and get even more loot. That is not the case in Salvation Onslaught. You do get some amount of seasonal weapons from doing that itself, but there is no real additional sort of currency there. It's like every so often you might get a engram from ranking up the vendor, but generally speaking, it is not kind of remotely the same way as being able to, get 5, 10, 15 weapons from the chest after Shaxx. So I think at baseline that this is not awarding enough loot in an activity that, has 6, 7, 8 weapons by the end of this if you are going for a specific role. The second thing I think it is doing wrong is potions. I hate potions. I do not think this is a good system, not just because potions are totally broken on my Warlock. I cannot make them at all. Even making them on my other two characters, the system is just like empirically worse than it was with Onslaught. You have to constantly keep these activated and they expire. So, you're not getting this kind of always on farming thing that you were with Onslaught and sort of, attuning your weapons to be those specific drops. The benefit here is that you can get salvation weapons in other activities with this focusing system. At the end of a strike, you might get the weapon you're focusing, for instance, but it is the application of these potions. It's just a more convoluted, way to do focusing in a way that I like. They wanted to make a seasonal mechanic, but they just made like a worse version of what we already had in terms of attunement. And I think that is contributing towards the problem because, yes, if you have a potion running 24/7 for the one specific thing you're looking for, that might be okay, but I guarantee you that a very small fraction of the player base is constantly like running the one potion that they want for whatever they're farming. And that's not because they're dumb. It's just because the system that has been invented here is very convoluted. I also think that these are not working as intended. Again, like if you're running a strike or something and you have a potion going, you will probably get whatever that is at the end of every strike, every other strike, whatever Crucible match. But there should not be a way that I do an entire 50 round 70-minute thing of Onslaught and get one copy of the weapon I'm supposedly focusing. Like that happened the other day where I'm trying to get the hand cannon with a specific role, and I got 4 pulse rifles. I did get 1 hand cannon at some point, but at least in terms of Onslaught, the main seasonal activity, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like, especially the chests that you get every 10 levels are focused for that one specific type of weapon. I got a good amount of seasonal weapons doing that, but I got one of the one I was actively focusing. So that does not seem like it's working, as intended. So that's another, reason why this isn't working. There is no effective multi-perk system here. One of the key things I have always said about, no crafting and the alternative being, farming up weapons by natural drops, you got to have some sort of investment or upgrade or whatever in order to get multiple perk drops on weapons eventually. That is not the case here. Something like, you can reset the rank on your Vanguard vendor, your Crucible vendor, and you start getting multiple perks. I think the max is 3 and 3. So you can kind of pair those together, and they did fix the whole, like, these perks are unlikely to drop together thing. That's just not true. In Onslaught, you can occasionally get a double perk in each column masterworked version of a weapon, but I've gotten 2 of these since the entire episode started, and that is with a good amount of playing and Onslaught runs and everything. So that is not doing what it needs to do. There needs to be some sort of investable upgrade to get this kind of stuff. They need to have higher drop rates on that kind of thing. I really enjoy the whole shiny pursuit system there, where, I got a ton of shinies by the end of that. Maybe they weren't perfect, but it seemed a lot more, chaseable than what we have now with, like, occasionally you get a masterworked item with double perks. It's not shiny. Shiny's just a cosmetic thing, but I still think they should be doing that. And the current system in terms of getting these double or triple perks just is not nearly where it needs to be if we are trying to offset some of the RNG here. Just trying to only eternally essentially just get 1 perk in each slot. I get it. I get why people would be frustrated with that, and there should be a way to earn a lot more perks than that. And maybe that happens in the future, but that does not seem like something that is necessarily going to be the case unless I'm missing something giant here. And then the final thing that I was talking about is, I think at this point, if people are kind of annoyed at specifically trying to farm 5 out of 5s, like I've never been a big, like, you need a perfect 5 out of 5 to be able to move on and farm something else. I get it. What they should be doing is, at this point in the game's lifespan, I think you need to drop weapons with a 3rd column in the barrel and magazine categories. If that is the weapon you're trying to farm. Just having 2 of those each, I don't see the harm in adding a 3rd column there. Like, this strikes me as something where Bungie might be like, this is technically impossible and we can't, we could never possibly do that. I don't know. That doesn't seem likely to me. I think we, on occasion, we have seen 3 perks in each slot there. I think with the weapons that had Seraph rounds, that was like almost always a 3rd column in the magazine. So it feels to me like if you're going to do the whole no crafting thing for a specific activity, it's probably time to start dropping 3 perks in each of those slots, which are not as important as the actual perk slots. But if people want kind of more magazine and barrel diversity, I don't see the reason that they shouldn't have more options in at least those categories. Masterwork, it depends. I guess we can leave that alone if we want to, but we need these boosts to make this viable. And I understand why people are upset when Bungie does not do any of these things. The clearest example here is dungeon farming is unforgivable. Like, it's, we had this whole chill inhibitor thing, but, like, it's always been like this, where dungeon farming is the worst loot farm in the game, essentially, because you do a whole encounter. The loot pool is like 3 pieces of armor and 3 weapons, so that's a 1 in 6 chance. There's no double perks. There's no, bad luck protection. There's nothing. So it is an exhausting type of farm that, rallies people against the idea of just random loot farms and no crafting. And I get that. It's just, every time I see this come up, it feels to me like Bungie is just not doing enough to offset the RNG that people are so mad about. And there's a middle ground here that I think they only rarely meet, where I think Onslaught, the original Onslaught, was closest, but since then it is not, and before then it has not really been at that tier. So you're never going to convince me that just trying to get random five red border weapons is fun. You get these upgrades where it's like one red border a week just for showing up, and like I don't even think this is like I don't have time to grind and do whatever. Like you're not going to convince me that at its core Destiny is not a looter shooter. Like there should be some amount of grinding and some amount of like exciting loot drops that actually make it worth playing, rather than just like I get 5 red borders at a 20% chance or whatever and then craft the perfect enhanced weapon. Like I think this runs contrary to kind of the fundamental nature of the game. And I know a lot of people disagree with this, but I'm going to stick by that. It's just when things feel bad, I think it's because Bungie is not doing enough on the other end to mitigate RNG and make drops still exciting without pissing people off, because RNG is so terrible that, you know, you're just going to get pissed and quit and whatever. I think there's a middle ground here, and I think Bungie only, you know, meets us there every so often. So that is my take on the current episodic crafting system. I think they're going to go back. I for next episode, I think there's enough people mad about this where they're probably just going to go back to craftable seasonal weapons again. This was an experiment. People who are in favor of crafting hate it. Even someone like me, who's a defender of kind of more RNG farming, thinks that they have not done a good enough job at RNG protection here to make this worthwhile. So whatever, you know, it is the way it is. And if they want to go back to it next season, I guess I'm not going to complain. It's just, I feel like the reason this is failing is not because RNG farming is so bad and crafting is so good. I just don't think that they're taking enough steps to ensure that this feels better than it does. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.